All right, so we're diving into this incredible story from the legendary writer Rabindranath Tagore. It's a really powerful tale about a friendship you'd never expect, a hidden truth, and a secret that connects two people from completely different worlds. Let's get into it. This is the story of the Kabuliwala.
But first, I want to start with a question for you. What does a father's love actually look like? Seriously, is it the same everywhere for everyone? Just kind of let that question hang in the back of your mind as we go, because honestly, it's at the heart of everything we're about to see.
So, our story kicks off with a little girl living in Calcutta, back when it was part of the British Empire, a girl named Minnie.
So her dad, he's actually the one telling us this whole story. And he says she's just a chatterbox, nonstop talking, she's curious, she's full of life. And while she might drive her mom a little nuts, her dad admits, for him, the silence is way worse.
Then one day, Minnie's looking out her window and she sees this guy. He's a Kabuliwala, which is basically a street vendor from Kabul in Afghanistan. He's tall, he's wearing a turban, and he's got this huge bag slung over his shoulder. I mean, he is the complete opposite of anyone in her little sheltered world.
And, her first reaction? Pure fear. She's got this totally wild, kid-like idea that his giant bag is full of other kids that he's kidnapped. The moment he even looks her way, she's out of there. But you know what? That fear, it doesn't last. In fact, it turns into this really unique friendship. And it's all built on, of all things, inside jokes.
So Rahmat, the Kabuliwala, he actually starts coming by pretty much every day. He just sits there and patiently listens to all her chatter. And he totally wins her over by giving her pistachios and raisins. And somehow, this giant man from the mountains and this tiny girl from the city, they become like best friends.
And they get their first inside joke going pretty fast. Minnie would ask him what was in his big sack, and he'd just roar back, "Harnti!" An elephant. It's such a simple, silly little thing, but to them, it's the funniest thing in the world. And it's watching this innocent joy that really moves her dad.
Okay, then there's joke number 2. Rahmat would tell Minnie she should never go to her in-laws' house, which was a common way of talking about getting married. Minnie, who's like 5, has no clue what that means, so she just flips it back on him and asks if he's going to his in-laws. He'd ball up his fist and joke about punching them, which would just make Minnie laugh like crazy. Yeah, just tuck that little joke away in your brain. It's going to be important later.
But of course, not everyone is on board with this. So you've got her dad, who's just touched by this whole thing, and then you've got her mom, who is super suspicious. She's worried this giant stranger is secretly a child kidnapper, and she's always on her husband's case to watch him more closely. So there's this quiet little tension just bubbling under the surface. And then it all just stops. The laughter, the daily visits, it all comes to this sudden and really violent end. So the dad, our narrator, he looks outside and there's this huge commotion. It's Rahmat being dragged away by the police. His clothes are all stained with blood. Turns out he'd gotten into a fight with a customer who owed him money, and in the heat of the moment, he stabbed the guy. And Minnie, she runs outside, sees her friend in handcuffs, and just innocently asks their old question, "Are you going to your in-laws' house?" And this moment, wow, it just perfectly captures that gap between a kid's world and adult reality. Because even then, as he's being arrested, Rahmat plays along. He actually laughs and says, yeah, that's exactly where he's going. Their little private joke, going to the in-laws' house, just became this really dark code for going to jail. And yeah, this is serious. Rahmat is charged with assault and gets sentenced to several years in prison. Just like that, their friendship is gone.
So the story fast forwards a lot. And we see just how much can change when time goes by. 8 years. Think about that. 8 long years pass. Rahmat is locked away. And Minnie? Well, she grows up. She gets new friends, she stops hanging out in her dad's study, and before you know it, she's a young woman. And her wedding is all planned.
And this is where it kind of gets heartbreaking, right? Minnie totally forgets about the Kabuliwala. It's not like she's being mean, it's just she's a kid. She grows up, and her life moves on. But for Rahmat, who's stuck in jail, that memory of the little girl he knew is all he really has. His life has been on pause.
And that brings us to the absolute heart of the story. The day Rahmat finally comes back, and Minnie's father has this realization that just changes everything. It's the morning of Minnie's wedding, and this man just walks into the house. It's Rahmat. He literally just gotten out of jail the night before. He's older, he's thinner,
He doesn't have his big bag or his long hair, but the father recognizes his smile. He asks if he can see the little girl, because in his mind, she's still that same 5-year-old.
At first, the father is like, no, you need to leave. We have a ceremony. But then Ramasat says something that just stops her dad in his tracks. He pulls out some grapes and nuts he brought for Minnie, and he says he's not a salesman anymore. He explains that he has a daughter of his own back home in Afghanistan, and seeing Minnie was his way of holding on to the memory of his own little girl.
And then he reaches into his shirt and pulls out this grimy, folded-up piece of paper. He so carefully unfolds it, and on it is a charcoal print of a tiny little hand. It's a keepsake of his own daughter who he hasn't seen for all these years. That little piece of paper, that's the secret he's been carrying right next to his heart.
And in that 1 second, everything just clicks for Minnie's dad. All the stuff that made them different, where they were from, how much money they had, one being an ex-con, all of it just vanished. He wasn't looking at a poor street vendor. He was looking at another father, a father just like him.
So with tears in his eyes, the father calls Minnie to come out, in her wedding dress. Rahmat is just stunned to see this grown woman. The father then takes some money from the wedding budget and gives it to Rahmat, telling him, go home, go find your daughter. He had to cut back on some of the lights and music, but as he says, that single act of kindness made the whole wedding feel more real, more luminous.
So we end up right back where we started. A father's love, turns out it's a universal language. It looks the same in a fancy house in Calcutta as it does in the mountains of Afghanistan. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? What invisible connections are all around us, just waiting for us to actually see them?